chaining confused with shaping? Because although it might sound similar, it's actually different. With shaping, yes, you're teaching successive approximations of one behavior versus chaining where you're going to teach multiple complex behaviors in order to be able to perform a task. So here's the definition. A behavioral chain is a set of complex behaviors that consist of many component behaviors that must occur in a sequence. So you have to perform these behaviors in a certain order in order for you to display the correct behavior. For example, doing your laundry. That's a complex behavior, right? It involves several different behavioral components in order for you to wash your clothes. There are several steps involved for you to do before you can wash your clothes. Tying your shoes is another complex behavior. Making a sandwich, brushing your teeth, washing your hands. These are all examples of complex behaviors. Okay? For example, washing your clothes, what type of steps are involved?
Separating.
So grabbing your clothes, right? And then separating them. Not all people separate their clothes, right? But some people typically, right? Yes. Your darks, your lights, your whites. Or some people just do darks and lights. So whichever way, right? You separate your clothes. Then what do you do after you separate your clothes?
Then you see what temperature or whatever belongs.
You set your temperature, right? Your settings. Then what?
Then you put the laundry detergent.
You have to open the lid, right? Open the lid. Put your clothes in. Then what? What about detergent?
Yeah, you put it in.
You have to add detergent, fabric softener if you use it. Close the lid. Then push the start button. Then you wait. Right? So lots of different behaviors, okay, are involved. What we just did, okay, we listed all of those steps, all of those different responses that we were looking for. We made what's called a stimulus-response chain. This is also known as a task analysis. A stimulus-response chain basically outlines all of the responses that are needed to perform the behavior or the task. And it breaks it down into SD, the discriminative stimulus, into SD and response components. I'm going to show you so that way it's clear. But on page 198, you all can, if you have your book, you can turn to that page. And in the middle of the page, it shows you an example of the SR chain. Okay? And this behavior is getting a piece of gum. Okay? You would think, right? Oh, that's just simple. But look at all these steps in order to chew gum. There's a lot of steps involved if you think about it. Okay? Remember, when you're teaching someone that doesn't know how to do anything, you need to break it down. This is how you're going to teach them. So chewing gum. Okay? Well, the first SD, and this can change, whether it's in the pocket or in your purse, wherever it is. Okay, let's say for this person, they carry it in their pocket. They're going to put the gum in the pocket. The gum in the pocket is an SD for reaching into your pocket. So gum is in my pocket. I'm going to stick my hand in my pocket, right? I'm going to now, reach into your pocket. My hand's in my pocket. That's a response. This response then becomes the SD number 2. So now, hand in my pocket, now what do? Response number 2, I'm going to pull out the pack of gum. Okay? So now response 2 becomes the SD. So now I have the pack of gum in my hands. Now what? I'm going to pull out 1 stick of gum. Pull out 1 stick of gum. Now response 3 becomes SD number 4. Stick of gum is in my hands. I'm going to unwrap it. Okay, that's response number 4. Now, unwrapped stick of gum is in my hands. Now I can put the gum in my mouth and chew. If I need to teach somebody how to do this, and we're going to talk about 3 different ways that you can teach based on chaining, but basically we look at these different components. I might have to start at the beginning and teach this, or I'll start at the end, which is backward chaining, or I'll just walk them through all of the steps, which is total task presentation, but I'm going to explain those in a little bit. But this is just to show you the SDR component. This is a task analysis. Okay? Okay. So, basically, there you go. The stimulus response chain, just remember, your SD1 is going to emit your first response. That first response then becomes SD2 or response number 2, and then response 2 becomes SD3, so forth and so forth. So you need this first SDR chain for this next step to occur. And then this needs to occur before you can do this. That's all that means. Okay, the chain sequence of behaviors. And then here, the last, once you've performed the last chain of behaviors, you get reinforced, right? I get to chew my gum. Yay, that's what I wanted. That becomes reinforcing in itself. I don't need somebody to also give me a gummy because I wanted to chew gum. Okay? So, a task analysis basically is it's a process. You're going to analyze the chain of behaviors. So you're going to think about, first of all, what your target behavior is. So the chewing gum, that's our target behavior. Now I have to think. I'm analyzing. I'm going to break down all of my different SDR components. I'm going to identify first all the behaviors that are necessary. Right? So sticking hand in pocket, taking hand, grabbing a pack of gum, taking hand out of pocket, taking stick out of package, unwrapping, right? Sticking gum in my mouth. Those are all behaviors that are necessary to perform the target behavior or the task. So first, what behaviors are involved? Then, what SDs do I need for the response to occur? Okay, that's conducting. That's what's involved in a task analysis. So another example. Eating a bowl of oatmeal. So the first SD that must be present is for the bowl of oatmeal to be present. my hand and I have a bowl of oatmeal right in front of me. That's the first SD. Then my response would be to put the spoon in the bowl, in the food. So now, spoon is in the bowl of oatmeal. That then becomes my SD2, which the next would set my response of scooping the oatmeal out. So now I have a spoonful of oatmeal, which then now I can put the food in my mouth and I can eat my oatmeal. And the reinforcers, I get to eat my oatmeal. Just, something as simple as this, we need to teach. Maybe they're not eating because they don't know how. They don't know how to eat. So we need to break it down into these different components so we can teach them.
Now, as they get more advanced, you can add like how to make the oatmeal, and then you go in these steps again.
Yeah, exactly. How to make to give them more independence. Yes, you can start, teaching them maybe how to prepare it. Same procedure. You would use chaining procedure. Breaks down the components of how to make oatmeal. How to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay. Some ways to help you identify your behaviors and your SDs is simply, there's 3 different ways. One is to observe someone performing the behavior. So, okay, I need to write a task analysis for washing hands. Ask mom, can you wash your hands? Observing someone. Okay, as she's washing her hands, writing down all the steps that she's doing. That's a way to start. Another way, ask someone to explain all the components of the task. So maybe just asking her, right? Asking someone else, okay, well, how do you, if you're going to wash your hands, can you explain all of the steps that are involved? Writing it down. Performing the task yourself. You going to the bathroom and performing, washing your hands yourself and just writing down all of the steps that you did. Or if you're going to make oatmeal, or if you're going to do your laundry. Now remember, everybody does things a little bit differently. So if 1 or 2 of your steps are backwards, but it's still functional to get that person to the next set of behaviors, then that's okay. Because some people might, if you're doing laundry, some people might put the detergent and the softener before they put their clothes in. Some people put the clothes in and then put the detergent and softener. Right? How many people put it before the clothes? How many put it after? See? So, is that a big deal? No. That's fine. What you could do also is just ask the client's parents, if they're living with the parents, right? Well, how do you want, how would you like for them to do it? Or how do you normally do it at home? Or, how has he seen you do, laundry? And so, fine, you can go by that. Yes?
So if they don't know how to do it at home and you teach them a different way, so that can confuse the...
No, it won't. No, it's not going to confuse them. You would just, everything you do, you would show the parents, and so they'll know. If they have a big, if they're upset by it, well, then you can just do it the way that they do it at home. That's why I would ask first, before I would just implement something myself. And then if they said, no, whatever you want to do, okay, fine. So then I'll just write it up, and then they'll get to see, what the steps are. All right. So let's practice. So let's say that, let's do one together. Let's say that we want to write a task analysis for washing hands. Okay. So our target behavior is washing hands. What are all of the steps involved in washing your hands? And we'll start with, we're standing in front of the sink. Okay, so turn on faucet. What else do we have to do? Okay. What else do we have to do? Okay. So either, see, this would depend. Either pump soap, if they have the pump, or whether it's a bar soap, then they would just grab the soap. So it would depend, right? So pump soap, or I'll just grab soap. What else?
Lather.
Yeah.
Yeah, lather, make bubbles. So lather, soap, make bubbles. You could either put rub hands together, depending on the level of your clients, right? So just rubbing hands together. What next? Oops. Oh, that's like spilling. What else?
Rinse.
Rinse. And then? Don't want to leave it running. And then what?
Towel. Like dry your hands.
So grab towel and dry hands. And then?
Towel down.
Put towel away. Are we done? Are we done? Yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
So washing hands in our heads, though, that's right. Eight steps that we have to do, that we would have to teach someone if we wanted to teach them how to wash their hands. Now, if we were to set this up into that SDR component, we can do that, right? What would be SD number 1?
Or get in front of the sink.
Stand in front of sink. That would be SD1. And with response 1 would be turn on faucet, right? So what now is SD2? Yeah, I mean faucet on, and then response 2 would be and so forth and so forth. Does this make sense? Yeah? Okay. All right. All right, so now after you have decided that you're going to use a chaining procedure, you've done your task analysis, you've identified your SDs, you've identified your responses, you now want to teach. You're going to teach these components. There are 3 different types of chaining procedures. The first is backwards chaining. And backwards chaining, all this means is that you're going to teach the last SR component first. So with our example of washing hands, the chain that you're going to focus on with teaching first would be putting the towel away, because that's our last response. Okay, so that's the one that you would teach first. And then once the learner has consecutively, performed that behavior correctly, then you're going to move up the chain. So now I'm going to teach the second to last chain of behaviors. And then you're going to keep going up and up and up and up. Okay? If I were to use forward chaining, and I'm going to show you guys videos so you can kind of see what these look like. And with forward chaining, then I would teach my first set of SDR components first. So turning on the faucet, that's what I would start with teaching. So they're standing in front of the sink. So I might use either hand over hand, or I could gesture and point, so that way they know to turn it on, or I could just verbally tell them, turn on the faucet. Okay? So that's what I would teach. That's forward chaining.
Which one's the most effective?
You know, there's been a lot of studies that have been done to see which one is most effective, and I think your book said, I don't know if your book identifies it or not. They might have said forward, but honestly, it just depends on your learner. There's not one that's more effective than the other. It just depends where they're having problems with the whole chain. So some might, have the ending down really well, but it's the beginning. It's getting them started. So you'll have to work on forward chaining. Or it could be vice versa, right? They are able to independently, start off the behavior right, but the last part, putting the towel away, that's where they have a problem. So then that's where you would start. Some learn better with, let's just go over, which is the next one. Oh no. The total task presentation. So going through each step all at once. So I would walk with my learner and stand with them and teach all of the steps with washing hands. So helping them turn the faucet on, using prompts to have them put their hands under. Every step I would be there. So there's not one that's more effective than the other one. It just depends on the level of your learner.
Wherever they're
having more problem with, whichever part of the chain they're having more problem with. With total task presentation, so each teaching is taught as just one whole unit because you're doing everything at once. You're going through all of the different behaviors with the learner. And this is also known as graduated guidance, which is just hand over hand. Kind of like, oh no, you're going to see an example of that with hand over hand over the total task presentation. On the video, they actually are working with the kid washing his hands. And so you'll see that they'll be walking into the sink, turning the faucet on, all of those steps. Yeah, total task is more appropriate for less complex behavior. So if it has, 8 steps, that's okay to do, but something that might involve 15, 20 steps, you might not want to be there. You might not want to use total task presentation. Yes?
And is there any confusion when they're in a situation that's different from the way you taught them the task?
So this is where, when you teach, you do want to use a variety of different types of stimuli so that way they can generalize. So you're not just going to teach in the clinic, but you're going to tell mom to work on these steps at home so that way they can generalize. It's not just in the clinic at the sink that I'm going to wash my hands this way, but at home. And so that way when they go out in public, mom knows the procedures. She can also help, at the bathroom at the mall, right, implementing the same procedures. Yeah. So you want to make sure you are setting up for generalization to occur as well. And then, let me see, going back, what is this? Oh, this just outlines, depending on whether you're using forward or backwards chaining, how you should teach. So, of course, yes, your SD must be present first, so that way, right, that first response can occur. Then you're going to prompt. Whether you're going to use a verbal prompt, so telling the child turn on the faucet, whether you're going to use a physical prompt, taking their hand, turning on the faucet, gestural prompt, modeling, you could use any one, not just verbal or physical. So whichever prompt you're going to use, then you're going to praise them for the correct response. If praise is not going to be enough motivation for your learner, then you might need to use other reinforcers. It's just going to depend. Then, of course, you want to make sure that it stayed your prompt. So let's say they did really well with the prompting. Okay, the next time I go up and we work on washing hands, I'm going to fade it. So instead of if I use physical prompt the first time, what could I use now? Maybe I'll skip to a verbal. Just tell them, right? Turn on the faucet. Yeah. And what type of fading procedure is that? Fading across prompts or fading within prompts? If I'm going from physical prompting to verbal prompting, am I using fading within prompts or fading across prompts? Across. And is that least to most prompting or most to least prompting?
Most to least.
Most to least, yes. Yes, most to least. Okay. Yeah. So then, when that response is occurring, he's doing step one really well, turning on the faucet on his own. I don't have to prompt anymore. Now I can move on to the next SR component. And when you get to that next SR component, you're going to repeat 1 through 5 for each one that you're teaching. Whether it's forward or backwards, you'll use the same. So if you're using backwards, then the next SR component is going to be the one before. And then, right, work your way back. Yes?
Can you do one and then do the other one? Or does this just confusing for you?
Yeah, you would normally just pick one. Yeah, you wouldn't do both. However, you might initially try one, and if you're not getting anywhere, this is not working, okay, now let me just try it backwards. But you should only use one. You don't have to do both. Okay, so here's some more examples. And this is in your book. Stuffing envelopes. So they've already written out a task analysis for stuffing envelopes. They've identified the SD and the SDR component. And so if I were to use backwards chaining, then I would present my last, the fourth step. So I'm going to do hand over hand for all of these steps. Then when I get to the SD4, this is the one I'm going to teach. So then this is the one that I'm going to use my prompting procedures, and then I'm going to fade it out, and then until he's doing this independently. Then I'll move up. So then I'll use hand over hand for SD1, SD2. Now I'm going to use my teaching procedures for SD3. So then he'll finish off the rest on his own, and then he'll move up. If I'm using backwards chaining. If I'm using forwards, then we'll start with SD1, and that's the one I'm going to teach. So I'll use my teaching procedures for SD1 and response 1, and then the rest of the procedure I will help him and do, the hand over hand. Until he gets that first component, until he can do this independently, then I'll move down. So then now he can do SD1 and R1 by himself, and then I'll teach SD2 and R2. Okay. Total task, prompt the learner, all the steps. So I'm going to teach with I'm going to use my teaching procedures with all of the steps in sequence. Other strategies that I can use, a written task analysis. So instead of me using forward or backwards chaining or total task presentation, I can just maybe write out, use textual prompts. So on the mirror of the bathroom, I will write each step down. Turn on faucet, wet hands, get soap, lather hands, write them all out. So all he has to do is read. Now, of course, right, your learner has to be able to read. You wouldn't use textual prompts if they can't read. So, making sure that this type of strategy will work with your learner. Picture prompts. Child can't read, but he works really well with pictures. Okay? Then just printing out pictures of each step, and you'll have them on the mirror so he can look. Okay, one, this is what I do. And he can see the picture of himself or somebody else turning on the faucet, putting their hands in the water. Yes?
Like when you buy a new let's say a fax machine or something, they use those picture prompts to tell you how to set it up.
Yeah, exactly. Something, a set of instructions.
Mm-hmm.
But pictures, they use pictures. Yeah, that would be an example. And then self-instruction. So you teaching the learner to repeat the step, to say the steps out loud. So that way when they go up to, so obviously for this one, they have to be able to, they have to be verbal, right? So that way they can say the steps. So, okay, so I stand in front of the sink, turn on faucet, right? Them saying the steps out loud is a prompt. So turn on the faucet, wet my hands, get the soap. Okay, self-instructions is another type of strategy that you can use to teach. So deciding whether behavioral chaining is appropriate to use with your learner, that's the first question you want to ask yourself. Is the person, am I trying to teach them to learn a new behavior, or are they just being non-compliant? If they're just being non-compliant and they just don't want to do it, then you're not going to use chaining procedures. You don't need to use that. Okay. So can't do versus won't do problem. That's what you need to ask yourself. The second step would be developing your task analysis, writing it out. 3, collecting your baseline data. You always want to collect baseline data before you start any type of teaching procedures. Why? Why is baseline important?
You know where to start.
Yeah. So you can monitor where you started and when you
Where
started
you end.
teaching.
Yes. So you can monitor his progress. So that way you have your baseline data, you've graphed it, and you'll know where he's at. So when you start implementing, if he's performing each component at 100%, then you can see the progress. And then, yes, choosing training procedure and implementing, okay. Continuing to collect data. So I take my baseline, I start my chaining procedure. I don't stop taking data and wait a month and then take data again. No. Every day that I implement the chaining procedure, I'm going to initially take data for that day, and then I'm going to graph it. So every day that I implement, I'm going to take data. So I'm continuing to collect data. Then, once he has mastered that skill, I'm going to now shift my reinforcement to intermittent. So every, whether it's a VR of 5, that I'll be, right, reinforcing this behavior. Intermittent schedules are important for what? Why? Why do we put behaviors on intermittent schedules of reinforcement? Yes. So the behavior can be maintained after treatment has ended. So now, let me show you examples. And in the video, you're going to do a little activity. So everyone take out a sheet of paper, because this you are going to turn in. This is going to be your activity for today. So take out a sheet of paper. Make sure you have your name on it, the day. Okay, so I'm going to play a video, and it's going to talk a little bit more about task analysis, and then it's going to show you a video of a little girl performing, I think it's brushing her teeth. Okay? So what I want you to do is you're going to write out all the steps that she does, right, when she brushes her teeth, and then I'm going to give you all some time, and you're going to actually write a task analysis. So I want you to write the SD and the R, the SDR component. Okay?
Recently, we at ATS were lucky enough to observe some training procedures of the chimpanzees at the Honolulu Zoo. Training is a big part of many zoos' enrichment programs, especially for intelligent animals that are required to learn new behaviors on a regular basis in the wild. Temple Grandin explains that training stimulates an animal's mind by teaching it something new, much like a human's mind is stimulated by learning a new language. Training doesn't always stimulate a natural behavior, but it's still enriching for the animals to learn new behaviors. On this particular day, we observed the morning routines in the holding cages before the chimps go out into their more natural habitat where they spend most of their time. Invited by their animal trainer, Solo, we got a behind-the-scenes look at how he teaches them various skills and behaviors that enrich their lives. Solo trains them using many of the same principles we have been discussing, including shaping, positive reinforcement, and timeout from positive reinforcement. One of the behaviors Solo has taught the chimps is to accept injections in their arm. Let's watch as he explains the importance of this behavior, and we see him use the principle of positive reinforcement and discuss shaping with successive approximations.
Shoulder. Good. This is just, it's a benefit to these animals that I do the shot rather than the vet. They get really stressed out when they see the vet. And the vet's not going to get this close to these animals, but he's just started taking the needle again after, I can't remember how long, but in the last month or so. So, and I had to work on small approximations from this far to this far and finally touching him. But he's coming back. He'll take it. Okay. Shoulder. Shoulder. Good. Shoulder. Good.
Another behavior that Solo is going to teach is for the chimps to give their arm for blood tests. In much the same way he is teaching the injection behavior, this is something that will make it safer when the chimps do need medical interventions or procedures done.
And here I'm training these animals to offer their arms so that I can draw blood. It'd be a lot easier than the vet knocking them down. I'd rather not knock them down I'd rather have them offer their body parts and then getting a blood workup. It's too stressful.
Hopefully soon we will get to check back in on the chimps at the Honolulu Zoo and see what Solo has trained them to do and how their lives have been enriched by his training. B.F. Skinner said, "Operant conditioning shapes behavior, much like a sculptor shapes clay. The final product seems to have a special unity or integrity of design, but we cannot find a point at which this suddenly appears. In the same sense, an operant is not something which appears full-grown in the behavior of an organism. It is the result of the continuous shaping process. In other words, a behavior doesn't suddenly appear. It is through constant shaping of a particular behavior that makes it a part of the student's behavioral repertoire. For example, we all remember learning to ride a bike. But what steps did we take to be able to ride a bike alone? Training wheels and an adult to help us feel safe is usually the first step. And what kept us going was the, "Woohoo, great job, there you go. You're riding a bike." Then came the moment of truth. Off came the training wheels, and you took one deep breath, and then, before you know it, you were riding independently. The point is, many new behaviors that are learned, such as learning to ride a bike, need to be shaped. However, to shape a behavior, we need to look at all the steps involved. This process is referred to as task analysis. When we brush our teeth, do we think about all the minute steps that are involved? From the moment we decide, "Ooh, my mouth feels icky," to when we exit the bathroom. How many steps are involved? This is what a task analysis sets out to find. By breaking down the tasks of brushing teeth into discrete steps, it becomes easier to teach.
We're going to teach, show it again.
Task analysis involves breaking a complex skill into smaller, teachable units, the products of which is a series of sequential ordered steps or tasks. For example, take algebra. If you look at it as a whole, it looks daunting. However, if you break it down into the simplest parts, you may think, "I can do this."
What we need to do is find a common denominator between 7 and 4.
Now I get it.
Bobby is overwhelmed with all the steps involved in tying his shoes. Bobby's older brother knows how to do it, and with shaping, he can teach Bobby to tie his shoes independently by taking the whole task and breaking it down into small steps. First, he crosses the laces, slips one under, and pulls, and then makes a loop, takes the other string and brings it around the loop, then pulls. As you can see, our task analysis of shoelace tying consists of a lot of steps. All of these steps need to be taught in order to achieve the final goal. But Bobby's brother's task analysis may look different from another's task analysis. It's okay. You can break down the skill into as many steps needed for the student to learn. Some steps can be chunked together for some students, and some students need skills broken down into very small steps. Let's do the same with brushing teeth. Practice breaking down behaviors by watching this brushing teeth video. Use your pause button as you write.
Do I need to show it again?
Yes.
Now what's that?
Practice breaking down behaviors by watching this brushing teeth video. Use your pause button as you write.
Does everybody have those? Okay, so remember, I just want you to write the steps for right now. Don't break them down into the SDR components yet. Do I need to play it again?
Yes. Usually keep playing.
Brushing teeth. Practice breaking down behaviors by watching this brushing teeth video. Use your pause button as you write.
One hint, when she's brushing her teeth, you don't have to put like right side and left
Oh,
side.
yeah. I was like, man, I did.
Oh,
Just put, brush teeth for 1 minute or whatever duration.
Here is an example of our task analysis for brushing teeth.
Kind of compare the
How does
steps.
yours compare?
So pick up toothbrush, open toothpaste lid, squeeze toothpaste on brush, close the lid, add the water, and then brush the teeth for 1 minute. And then she rinsed her mouth and the brush, and then she put toothbrush away. See how yours compares. If you have an extra step, that's fine.
I have it turning on and off.
That's perfect. I would have done the same thing because to me that's part of it. Yeah, if you put turning on and off the faucet, that's fine. I would leave it. Okay. So just have the steps.
Now that we have analyzed all the steps, our next question should be, how do we present all these steps? What steps should I teach first?
Okay. So before we break down into the SDR components, I just want to show you guys now examples of change.
When teaching behaviors that require multiple steps, you can use a particular type of shaping called chaining. Chaining is much like making a paper chain. Chaining is a specific sequence of responses with each sequence associated with a particular stimulus condition, or in simpler terms, teaching small tasks by linking them with others that occur in a sequence before or after it. There are different types of chaining procedures: forward chaining, backward chaining, and total task presentation. Forward chaining is teaching the task from beginning to end in naturally occurring order.
The red or the yellow?
Forward chaining only targets one step at a time from the beginning.
Green, red. All right. I'll be yellow. Okay, you can go first.
No. All right, I'll go first.
Purple. I got purple. All right.
Your turn. Pick a card. You teach the first step in the task by using prompt fading. Here, pick a card. Ooh, I see what color it is. Here, well, pick a card. Ooh, what color?
Yellow.
Two yellows. Go 2 yellows. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2 yellow. Good. Here, have a yellow candy. Delivering reinforcement for the first step. Red. 1 red. Okay, your turn. You picked a card. Very good. It's purple. Okay, go to purple. Here, put your red one on purple. Then using full prompts to complete all the other steps for the student. Once the child can independently complete the first step, you can teach the second step. Start fading prompts with this as well. Your turn. Ooh. Your turn. Yeah. Green. What do you do now? Red. Oh, you go on red. Very good. Give me 5. Good. You want a red candy? Okay, how about a purple one? Okay, so your turn, Emily. Another type of chaining is backward chaining. Backward chaining is when all the behaviors that are identified in the task analysis are done by the teacher, except for the final behavior.
Nice. Draw a smiley face. So she drew, right? She did the first step, and now she's teaching the second step. So he has to do the last step, which is fill in the face.
Simply put, when teaching to draw a smiley face, the teacher would do everything up to the last step, and then the learner would do the last step. Eventually, the student would be taught the last 2 steps, then the last 3 steps, and so on until he independently drew a smiley face.
Oh no! Little hand! Last one. Here, draw a smiley face. Wow! You're such a good artist! Here you go.
The last type of chaining is total task presentation. Total task presentation is a variation of forward chaining in which the student is taught each of the steps in the task analysis all at once. So unlike forward or backward chaining, where only the first or last step is introduced, in total task presentation, all the steps are taught at once within each teaching session. Furthermore, in a total task presentation, the student helps with every step so he will be successful. Bobby's brother taught him to tie his shoe by doing total task presentation. He showed him how to do it all the way through each time until Bobby got it himself. Let's see if you can identify what type of chaining is being used in teaching the following skills. Okay, one more time. Count backwards from 20.
20, 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 12, 11.
All right, go. Let's look for Bakugan.
So what type of chaining procedure was used? Forward or backward? How many say backwards? How many say forward?
Was this forward chaining, backward chaining, or total task presentation?
Why is it forward? Anybody
That's
guess?
correct, forward chaining.
You gotta count backwards?
Because why?
Just to shoot you count backwards?
Yes. Okay, so, well, that's the SD, right? Count backwards. And if you look at his sheet of paper here, the numbers are blocked off, so he has to do that independently. So if he's starting backwards, he is having to start the behavior first. That's what she's teaching. the numbers are written out. So that's why it's forward chaining. And then it's written right there. So here's the picture prompts that I was showing you. Actually, these are picture and text.
Make bubbles. Good. Rinse well. Good. Rinse well. Keep rinsing. Okay. Dry with paper towel. Dry with paper towel. Good job. Okay, turn off the water with paper towel. Throw away. Throw away. There you go. Good job washing your hands.
Was this forward chaining, backward chaining, or total task presentation?
How many say total task? How many say forward? How many say backward? It's backward chaining. Why? If you look at the video, that last step, he had to do independently. She wasn't guiding him fully. She was just kind of tapping him on the shoulder because he was going off in the wrong direction, right? So she just kind of went this way and tapped him to go throw the paper towel away, right? And she used gestures. That's what she was trying to teach, was the last step. If she was using total task, she would be there hand over hand. So she would grab his hand and pick up the trash can and then have his hand and then throw it away. But she didn't. That's what she was teaching. So she just tapped, right? Throw it away. She tapped the trash can. He picked it up on his own and he threw it away. And that was the last step. Okay? So it was backwards chaining. Do y'all want to see that again, the little part at the end, just so you can kind of see?
When teaching behaviors that require...
I'm sorry?
Dry with paper towel.
No, just as long as you know examples of it. So look, watch. Oh.
Throw away.
So throughout everything,
Throw away.
She's got hand over hand. She's doing all of the steps with him. And now throw away. She had to just
Throw
give
away.
a little gestural prompt. That's what she's teaching. Prompt, tap, and he picked it up.
There you go. Good job washing your hands.
Because that's the one she's
Was this forward chaining, backward chaining, or total tap?
Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a question?
I was going to ask if throwing away, if it was something that was taught to them beforehand.
Sorry.
That was going to be my question, but if they're just trying to fade it away from the steps.
They're trying.
Rather than generalizing beforehand of what throwing away meant.
Oh, if he already knew to throw it away. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if he knew how to throw it before, but as far as completing that step in the chain of washing your hands, for him to do it independently, they were teaching him. For him to do it when he washes his hands. Okay, so now what I want you to do, you can do it independently, or you can do it with a partner if you need someone to help you, is to now use your steps that you wrote down for brushing teeth, and I want you to write your SDR component. Okay? So, what was step one? Please take out
Take out the toothbrush.
toothbrush. Okay. Yeah. So So toothbrush in hand.